Hey everybody, welcome to the Alt Logic X Manual Part 4. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down some of the main window. We're going to do this very methodically over the next few weeks. Today, we're going to be dealing with the inspector area for audio tracks and audio tracks only. And the next video, Part 5, we're going to be breaking down MIDI and instrument tracks, and we're going to go from there. So this stuff, this side of our window has so much information, and I think it's really valuable to go through what each of it means and why you can see some of it but not all the time. And so we have an audio track with just a bass part loaded up. I clicked on the region and automatically things start changing. So we have two main windows here. We have our track area and we have our region area. We talked a little bit about this in part 3 of this series, but now we're going to be doing a deeper dive on each of these sections to really show you some of the power that comes from understanding our region and track inspector. Specifically this time we're looking at an audio track because I think each of them are different enough and will cover enough ground in each of them that it's worth breaking it down into this deeper dive. So first and foremost, when I click on the region, you're going to see the region area for this area changing. And then in the track area for audio tracks, we don't have much, but we do have a couple things which are really important to know about. So for instance, when I click on the region, you'll see things disappearing up at the top. And those won't appear until we turn on some of our other options. So for instance, sometimes with this, we have to turn on flex and follow first. And then we'll be able to quantize the audio. And this quantizes just like MIDI. We can do that. That's a 16th note quantization. And unless you have a very good reason for doing that, typically we don't do too much quantization. We use the groove tracks more often than not, which we'll talk about separately. But this is where we would have some of the options. And the minute we turn on quantization, then we have a Q range option pop up down below, and we have a strength option, so we can do full strength or anything down to barely any quantization. But again, quantization for me has come down to quantizing maybe one track and allowing the groove track to do its work. We can transpose, fine tune, loop, mute, all of this per region. Now, one cool thing that we have here is the speed up or fade out options, or fade in and fade out. So I can actually do a speed up option and let's see, do like a 5,000. So that's handy to be able to do speed in and fade in as well. We can change the type of curve, the type of crossfade or equal power S-curve options for that. And then down below, right now, let's turn off quantization and let's turn off flex and follow. And that brings back the reverse option. So I can actually reverse the clip, but not when flex and follow is engaged. I'd have to activate reverse, return on flex and follow. And even though it looks like it went back to the non-reverse type, it actually keeps it reversed auditorially. So I think that that's actually possibly a little visual bug. That's fine. The next thing I want to look at is the track options. We have the option for freezing. We can actually say source only, which would be just freezing the track with audio that doesn't do as much because we're just reading the file off the hard drive either way, unless you have like a bazillion edits on a track, or pre-fader, which means that it's going to go through some of the effects. This one is more useful. If you don't know where the freeze track option is, if you control click on the actual track here, track header components, we can do the freeze option right here. And then I'll turn it on and off Looks like a little snowflake. The other thing I want to look at though is the flex mode, which we can turn on for the entire track. So I can, for instance, do flex pitch on the entire track, and then we have formant options, which we can change. The formant options are actually really useful for getting a natural sound if we're doing a transposition, say, of an entire song up one step, half step, 1.5 steps. Because what happens is we transpose it up a little bit, and the whole thing sounds unnatural typically. And that's because when you sing, you have your vocal cords, which give you your fundamental frequency, and then the other parts of your throat, your nasal cavity, inside your mouth, the shape of how you move your lips, all of those things add essentially the timbre to your voice, the sound of your voice. And if you sing up a half step or a whole step, all of the parts of your physical head don't change. They don't get higher. They don't get smaller and get higher. So just the fundamentals going up. So what we want to do is transpose up the fundamental, but take those formants, as they're called, and push them back down so that they remain the same. So we actually have the ability to do that here, where we can actually do formant tracking, formant shifting. We can actually process always or keep unvoiced formants. So we have some options there for the formants. All of these options here are going to change depending on which of these we use. So if we use rhythmic, you'll see the loop length, the decay, the loop offset. If we do a speed, there's nothing there. If we do tempophone, there's a little bit there, grain size, crossfading. So we have some things here which will change depending on which of those flex modes we choose. Keep in mind that even though in the edit mode, where we might actually come through and use something like flex pitch to alter our voices and stuff, instruments, monophonic instruments, we could also turn on the mode up here in our track and have control inside the track itself. We don't have to go into the edit mode to do that. And you can even, if you're recording something like a vocal here, you could have that turned on from the get-go and be able to quickly look at it and see how the performance in terms of pitch was happening on your actual track. And so that gives you an additional way to look without having to open up the editor or anything else. We can do a lot of this work right here on the main track. And that ties into what we have here in terms of what we set for our track in terms of flex mode and our regions in terms of flex and follow. And so I think all of those things tie together a little bit. The other thing I'll say is that even if you don't do the looping from your inspector here, you will be able to just click on things and see what things are activated. So this is a great place to get an overview of information for your track without necessarily having to just interpret everything visually. So you can click on things, and when you click on two things, if there's a little asterisk, it means that there's two different regions at least that have different settings in there. So that'll tell you, for instance, if you're looking through and notice something's different, but you can't exactly remember where it is or figure out what it is, you can select all your regions, look here and see if anything is set with an asterisk, and you'll see that different settings are in different places. That would be useful, for instance, if I have this track here transposed, up an octave, all of a sudden I'm going to see that, wait, there's a difference in transposition happening here. Then I can look a little closer and see that that one was up 12, and I want to put that back down to 0. So that's useful. Also, keep in mind, if you can't see some of your options here, then it's something else has deactivated them. So you saw that once I transposed this, I couldn't reverse it any longer. And if you want to see all of the options, then you just select off of it, and it'll show you everything that's possible right there. So you'll see that the one that keeps on being disappeared is speed. And so that's not one of the ones that we have currently available to do for any of these. And if I click on a region like that, it actually disappears anyway. Okay, this has been a look now at the inspector option for audio tracks, more in depth, and we're going to be doing at least one more of these, looking at the MIDI instrument tracks, talking about all the options we have for this. And so stay tuned. Part 5 coming up probably next week. We're going to try to do one of these each week to get more and more in depth with our interface, with our tools. We're going to be looking at track options, track header. We're going to be looking at all of these things over the next weeks as we really dive deep into Logic Pro 10. If you haven't already, make sure you go over to the Facebook group that we've started, which is the companion community for this project we're doing. Link is in the description down below, and it's, starting off small, but, we're going to grow, and it's going to be one of those really cool groups where a lot of meaningful things are discussed and happen, so make sure you check it out. Otherwise, that's it for today. Come back next week for part 5.